it's much easier to design a path to get you there when we know what that is. And sometimes I have clients who are talking to me who are like, I don't know where I'm going to live, what I'm going to do, but I just need out. And that's real.
Mm-hmm. Who I need to be, coming from the heart, coming from the heart. Welcome back to MOMnation from the Heart. And now a word from our sponsor. Hey y'all, Katie here, founder of MOMnation and owner and operator of Team EvoAZ at eXp Realty, your go-to gal for anything real estate in the state of Arizona. I am the sponsor of today's show. I will link my page and information in the show notes so you can quickly and easily get in touch with me should you need anything real estate, any advice, or maybe you're looking to get into the business. I sure hope you enjoy today's show. Thanks for listening. Hey, MOMnation, we are back with another episode of From the Heart, where we share inspirational stories, useful information, and we discuss a variety of women-related topics. I'm Katie, the founder of MOMnation, and I would like to extend a very warm welcome to our co-founder, Sherry. How's it going,
Hey.
Sherry?
Excellent. How about you?
Awesome. Good to see you as always. And of course, our very special return guest, because we love her so much, Billie Tarasio with Modern Law. How's it going, girl?
So good. Thank you for having me back. Great to see you both again.
Oh, ditto. I love your hair, by the way. I am just loving that red on you.
Thank you.
Very cool. So we're going to be talking about a topic that we all have experience with, actually, on a personal level, right? Yeah. And that is the topic of divorce. So let's just jump right into it, Billie. Let's talk about preparation, because, I'm just thinking back to my divorce and where I started thinking about it well before it actually happened. And really wanted to, it sounds, I don't know. I felt a little sneaky at times because it sounds weird to be like, well, I'm not going to let you in on what my plans are, but I'm going to prepare myself before I do that. But you kind of have to.
Right. Yeah. And I think, I don't know, you tell me if this is true for you as well, but for me, as a divorce attorney, I just found myself sort of thinking like, well, what would it look like if I was no longer married? It just started with sort of curiosity, like really trying to envision, like, would my life be better? What would be the differences? How might it work? So tell me, was that the same for you too?
Oh, 100%. And to the point where I was like, well, does it work if I make my own bank account and kind of start throwing money at it? Like, how do I do that? And then how do I make sure that's mine when all is said and done? How about you, Cher?
So I have two experiences. So I'm like a seasoned pro, I feel like. I don't know. Like mine was more of, I was the only one working in my first marriage. And so that was hard for me because I still had to keep the bank account. Like I couldn't just take it, right? Like I had to leave that open. But that definitely ended up hurting me in the long run. So I don't know.
Yeah. So, a lot of this is about like, okay, well, what does my life look like right now? Right. We've got, one bank account, all the money comes in, or we've got one bank account. I'm responsible for all of it, or he's responsible for all of it. Like what practically, how is everything going to get paid for? Is right. One of the very first, most important questions. If I move out and I get it my own place, or if he moves out and gets his own place, how will all the bills be paid?
And
that's one question. And
that's huge because so leaving for me this last time, it was like, okay, well now I have all of the married bills still stay there. Like they don't just disappear, right? So you still have to do that. Plus now we had a new rental property, all the utilities, all of these extra bills that I never had before. So that for me, that definitely was like a standstill. Like I got scared to thinking like, I can't do this financially.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. So many people stay married because they financially cannot see how not to be married. And then the other big, huge thing is thinking, how am I gonna share my kids with somebody that maybe I don't like, or maybe I don't trust, or maybe I need? There's just, how do I go from being a unit that divides duties, is a partnership, divides money responsibilities and kid responsibilities, to being on my own? And what do I do in the meantime? So maybe you're seeing like what you want your future to look like, but you don't know how to get from where you're at right now to what your future looks like. And one of the things that I really want and ask my clients to do is figure out what that future looks like first.
Mm-hmm.
It's much easier to design a path to get you there when we know what that is. And sometimes I have clients who are talking to me who are like, I don't know where I'm going to live, what I'm going to do, but I just need out. And that's real.
Mm-hmm. And it's a scary spot. And I see so many, it's like, Sherry and I kind of have this bird's eye view of just thousands and thousands of families with our group, right? And I see so many posts out there of, in fact, there's one floating around right now. I need to get out. I know I need to get out, but I've been staying because I don't see a way out. Mm-hmm. And, we come from all different areas. Like, maybe some people have a really great support system. They've got family, parents that can help them out, and they can see the light. They can see the path, in other words. But what about those of us who don't? Who, live across the country from any sort of family member, who just relies so heavily on that union and has for so long. Like, it's just so hard to sort of unravel from that. And so what's your best advice? What do you typically give people that come to you in that scenario?
Well, you have got to have your resources lined up. And by resources, I don't just mean money. I mean friends, I mean family, I mean support, I mean childcare, I mean your car. I mean, like, you have to start building that far before you just leave. Mm-hmm. And many times people do that. They start living separate lives in the same house. And that makes it a little easier. You don't just go from being a wholly connected, interdependent unit, as toxic as it might be, to being two functioning households overnight. So it's okay to start investing in your career, your earning capacity, your friend groups. It's okay to join divorce support groups online, to get information, to take your time planning, and to start building your credit. I've had some moms who said that they were with such controlling husbands that they started buying gift cards whenever they went shopping in order to get themselves their cash reserve, because they weren't allowed to have their own bank account and their spending was tracked. But they could go to Target and get themselves a $100 gift card. They could apply for a credit card and have it sent to their friend's house. And they could start spending and start paying that off to establish their credit. Like, you have to sort of like restart being an adult almost for some people.
And I think, Katie, going back to what you originally said, is like, you felt sneaky in a little bit of that planning and prepping, but just like Billie said, you literally have to in order to establish and move forward.
Yeah. How many people come to you that have no plan, that are just like, well, I got to go and I don't know what's the next step, Billie, and like look to you for that?
Well, those are the hardest consultations. I had one just, I think, last week. And usually people come to me and they have clear goals, and I can leave a consultation, either a half an hour or an hour, and we can come up with an entire plan and it meets their goals. But this person was like, I don't know if I want to live in Arizona. I don't know where I'd like to live. I've got a brother here. I've got a brother here. I don't know if, and this was a stay-at-home mom. I think stay-at-home moms have the hardest time.
Yeah.
She did not want her 4 children to spend equal time with their dad. So moving sort of looked nice, because then she wouldn't have to share them half the time. That's just the reality.
Mhm.
And they were also hard children. They were special needs kids. So she couldn't get one babysitter for four of them. She had to split up the older two and then have a third here. So like she needed resources. And I couldn't tell her when to file, whether or not to let him move back in, how to handle all the bills, because we didn't know when she wanted to file or where she wanted to go. So those are kind of decisions that have to be made before we take any legal action whatsoever.
But what are the chances in her particular case, or something similar? What are the chances that she would even be allowed to leave the state with the kids? Like, you can make this great plan that works out really well for you and, satisfies you, but is that necessarily how the courts are going to decide? So how do we then navigate that?
You have to talk to a lawyer. You just have to, because in her particular case, with her particular children and her particular husband, and how much involvement he had or not had, and how much time he could or could not have with them, she would be able to move, because the court then has to decide, who do I have these four kids live with primarily? Mom, who's always been their primary caregiver and can take care of them, or dad, who's never spent more than a night alone with them. And that becomes a better gamble. And it's always a gamble, but that becomes a better gamble than, and you never want to go to the court and say, I'd like to move, but if you won't let me, then I'll stay here. You don't want to do that. And the other thing is, like, if there isn't enough money, that's the other thing. And in her case, there was not enough money. He did not make enough money to pay for two households, and she had no skills and no job. So her leaving to go live with family to be supported made a lot of sense.
It was more financially
as a
sound,
viable option.
which if you prove that to the judge, that helps your case too.
Right. If she can't get a job here that would even pay for the childcare, and he doesn't make enough money to support himself and her, what are we doing? So we have to really deal with the practicality of the situation.
So the best first step would be to talk with you, and then kind of start the plan from there, or start building the path from there.
Not everybody needs that. Some people know, I know exactly where I'm going to live. I've got family here. We're all from here. We're going to continue to stay here. My kids are in school. They're going to finish school. We're doing that. And then, they're considering, sometimes people are like, how much should I spend on a rental?
Yeah.
What should my post-divorce budget look like? And some people have the luxury of being able to decide that. They have a lot of money available to them. They might have a huge amount of savings, but they're like, should I spend it or should I not? How much should I be willing to spend here? So if they know what their goals are, if their long-term goals are, we're going to stay in the same place, we're going to share the kids or whatnot, then we can start talking about a plan, how much to spend. Are you looking to establish a spousal maintenance need number? If you are, you're going to need to spend a little bit more than maybe you're comfortable with, because if you don't need that money, I'm not going to be able to get you a lot of spousal maintenance. So we just have to talk through all of those things based on the goals and the circumstances that exist.
And so say this was my situation and I came up with a plan for you, and I said, hey, here's where I'm going to get the money. I need X amount from him for probably X amount of time. Then you can look at the situation and, granted, you don't have a crystal ball, I know, but you can look at the situation and say, yeah, that's probably never going to fly. No chance in hell. Or let's roll with this. Let's go down this road.
Definitely. I can look at, the potential, how much is he making? How much are you making? How much extra is there in the household budget? Will he be expected to downsize? How much more could you make? What's the need and the shortfall? And a lot of it is formulaic and financial analysis. And one of the things we have at Modern Law is a certified divorce financial analyst and a forensic accountant who's on staff full time. And they can help us crunch those numbers and create a report that we can put in front of the judge that says, here's how much money he should have to pay her, and here's exactly why. And it's all supported by historic data. Here's what they did during the marriage. Here's what she can make now. Here's how she supported his career. And here's how much money she lost personally by supporting his career. He can afford to pay her, blah, blah, blah. That should be the number.
Is there any sort of formula that the courts go by to help decide this?
Not for spousal maintenance. Yes, for child support. So child support is by a calculator. You can find it online. You can plug in the numbers. But spousal maintenance does not have a formula.
Because there's too many factors.
Why don't they have a formula? I don't know. I mean, some states do. California does, but Arizona does not. So it's all discretionary.
So let's just say I'm in that position. What could somebody in that position do to prepare best to give you the information that you need? Or is that something that you have a questionnaire that you sort of interview them for? Or is there some preparation that somebody could come to the table with you and make life easier for everybody and say, hey, here's what's been going on throughout the marriage. Here's how he spends. Here's what I've done. Like what sort of tips can you give surrounding that?
So all of the financial data is usually in bank accounts and credit card statements. And so we can take the last, 3 years or 12 months, whatever we need to do, whatever we need to look at, and input that data into a software and categorize it and determine what money is being spent where. And then we can look at income and expenses and figure it out from there.
And I'm assuming it's detrimental if, he or she, I mean, who it could be anybody in this case, goes out and frivolously spends.
So yes and no. It does. If there's a lot of frivolous spending, it does establish a certain lifestyle.
Mm.
And so if your family frequently goes on 3, 4, 5 vacations a year and frequently spends a lot of money on shopping and, frequently spends a lot of money on sports equipment for children, that's an established line that we probably can't maintain. So no one should be under any delusion that you get to live the same life divorced that you do married. You don't. There just isn't enough resources. But when we're figuring out how much support is appropriate, that previous familial spending matters. Now, let's say that's not it. Instead, we've got, wife who has a gambling addiction and is spending lots and lots of money gambling. That type of frivolous spending is called community waste. And she might end up having to pay back half of what she wasted that wasn't for the benefit of the community.
Ooh, I did not know that.
You guys just brought up 2 things. So the first topic we were talking about was, I don't know. So my situation was in Arizona, Billie. I was the only one working and my husband at the time was not working. Our kids were in school full time, so he was just at home. So when we went through the divorce process, he did request spousal support. Thankfully, by the graces of the judge, he determined that, hey, you're fully capable of working. There's no reason that you shouldn't be working. And so said no to spousal support and then based child support calculator off of his potential as a working adult of whatever stature, like you're not disabled or anything. This is minimum wage and this is what you should be paying. So that was one thing that I wanted to mention. Do you have any experience or anything that you want to share about that?
Definitely. How long was he in stay-at-home dad mode?
We were married for 6 years. He didn't work the entire time.
Okay. Did he work before you got married?
Yes.
Okay. And how old was he?
We were 28 at the time or something?
Okay. So when you're 28, your earning capacity is probably about the same as it was when you were 25. Like if it's pretty easy to get a job and everyone is expected to work to their capacity. Everyone is expected to work to their capacity unless there's some reason that doesn't make sense. So like the mom I was talking about earlier, who has the 4 kids, who doesn't, she didn't graduate from college. I think she's got a high school education. She's been married 20 years and she has no skills. I mean, no skills.
So she hasn't worked that whole time.
No.
Oh gosh.
So will she be imputed minimum wage? Totally possible. But the child support worksheet does allow for, if you are the caretaker of special needs children or super young children who need you at home, then the child support guidelines allow for the court not to impute minimum wage income or your earning capacity. But the child support guidelines also do allow the judge to impute your earning capacity. If you're voluntarily underemployed or if you're unemployed, the judge can use what your earning capacity is in the child support worksheet. And determining what your earning capacity is requires some effort. You need to show, what did they do previously? What's their educational background? How many jobs are available in this field? And what does that pay? And then you would show that to the judge and you would say, here is the earning capacity I'd like you to put into the child support calculator. The other thing is, you can't be a stay-at-home dad in a divorced household. You just can't. Like, the judge is not going to say, you, sir, go show up at her house and operate as the stay-at-home dad while she goes to work, and then she'll pay your bills. Like, it just does not work that way, unless for some ill-advised reason a couple decides to operate that way post-divorce.
Yeah, there was something else that I wanted to say. Oh, so something else that I've learned through my experience here in this divorce land, is that, and I just want to make mention to it, because if any of our moms out there are experiencing it, make sure you talk with Billie or whoever you're speaking to and getting a consult with. If the other person has had infidelity and they're cheating, and while you are still legally married, they are spending marital money, marital funds on said extra person, that could also, so that could benefit me, right? And determining whether or not I don't need to pay spousal support, or, right, say we have a savings account full of a ton of money, but then I can prove and show all of these receipts of you've been dating and spending all of our marital money on dating. Doesn't that help me, Billie? And explain that, please.
Yeah, so that would be marital waste. Marital waste is when you go spend money that is not for the benefit of the community. And certainly you being out with your new girlfriend is not in benefit of the community. It does not make a difference officially in spousal maintenance. It's not a factor. And the way spousal maintenance works in Arizona is you have to qualify under one of 5 factors before you even get to move on to what was the spending during the marriage, how long were you married, how old are you. None of that matters until you qualify. And you qualify if you're unable to meet your reasonable needs, if you invested in your spouse's education, if you invested in your spouse's career to the detriment of your own, if you've been married a super long time and there's no chance of being gainfully employed, and there's a 5th one, but it's escaping me. If you don't meet one of those criteria, so if you are, let's say you're married for 20 years, and this happens sometimes, you're a flight attendant and you make $70,000 a year, and your spouse is a pilot and he makes $300,000 a year. If you didn't put him through college or stop working or take care of the kids and you can pay your bills, you don't qualify for spousal maintenance.
Right.
Even though there's a big difference between 300 and 70,000.
Right.
I'm not saying that that's 100% all the time the case, because I might be able to show that you can't meet your reasonable needs on 70,000 based on your bills. But generally speaking, I'm trying to give an example where it might seem like spousal maintenance would be appropriate and it isn't.
Okay. That makes
Yet,
sense.
if you took a break from your career to help him further his, like, what would you show like, what do I say? Like, I put him through real estate school. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what would the other spouse show to show that they did that they took the back burner so that their spouse could achieve?
We would look at how much money you were making. Let's say you were a teacher and you were employed and you were on a path. You would have had raises and you would have had retirement and you would have had a different earning capacity today than you had when you stopped working. Now, when you stopped working, why was it? Was it because you had children at home that you were taking care of? Was it to move because his job required you to relocate? Were you unable to reestablish your career because you had to relocate often? And then, what would you be worth now? And what would that earning be? What's the difference between what you would have made had you continued to work versus what you'll make now?
Right. Because that gap, that window of time that you were out of employment changes your trajectory for sure. Like your like she said, your 401k, all of that stuff is different because you weren't investing time and money and effort into it. So
it's not a good idea. Like, ladies, if you're listening, I understand that you may want to be home with the kids, Or you may feel some level of expectation from your culture, from your family, from your spouse. Your spouse may really enjoy having you take care of everything. It's not a good idea. It's not a good idea because he might die.
Yeah.
He might meet Bambi and leave you tomorrow. Like, it is not a good idea to ever be in a place where you are completely dependent on another person. Please invest in yourself, in your hopes, in your dreams, in your earning capacity. Maybe it's a side hustle. I don't really care what it is. Just know that if you were left tomorrow, you'd be okay.
And I think that has so much value because on the other side, I've never not worked, but I can guarantee you every single divorce, I feel like I was having to start over, even though I was the one with the money. So I think that it's really important to understand, without the job, without the experience, without the education, without all of that, like I feel like you're starting 10 steps behind. And if I felt like, even with my job, even with my income and all of that, I was starting over, I lost so much. I can't imagine how somebody who hasn't had any of that and doesn't have that could feel at that moment in time, because it was hard.
Well, you're right. And typically the under-earning spouse never recovers. And the over-earning spouse has a tough few years, and then they bounce back. Yes, you're starting over, but you're better off today than you were when you were married, right?
Yeah, 100%. Because you have your freedom. You don't have to, deal with whatever was going on. You get to raise your kids how you want, all of that. And yeah, I agree.
So I feel like that brings us back to the fear portion. For the spouse that did decide, hey, you go be the hunter gatherer and I'll keep the homestead happy here. And I feel like, that definitely plays into a hesitation. So if there is a spouse that is needing to get out, they have no skills, they've been at home for a while, they've got no savings, and it's looking pretty bleak. Are there any financial resources out there, anything that they can tap into that would help somebody in that situation?
Well, there is no government program for you've been a stay-at-home mom and now you're on your own. That's called welfare. And you can do that. You can do that, and you should do that. You should take advantage of everything you possibly can to set yourself up for success. That means every government resource that you have the opportunity to take, you should do. And you also should invest in yourself. And you also should consider your how much money you're spending. So I talked to a mom the other day who she and her husband were missionaries, and they never made a lot of money. And she wasn't working because they lived a pretty traditional conservative lifestyle. And she decided to spend, I think, half of their savings to get a tiny house and plop it in her parents' backyard and figure out how to restart for very little money with the resources she had. So that's the other thing. Be creative. Mm-hmm. Figure out what your resources are, and do not be, there is no shame in moving in with your family, right? Or getting a roommate or figuring it out. There is no shame in that. There's a lady I follow on TikTok who is blowing up, and she's great. And she's a social media director, and she's a creator, and she got a divorce recently, and she's living at home and she's saving money so that she can buy herself a house. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is a beautiful launch. So you do what you got to do.
Well, and I see a lot of moms, even within our group, that are reaching out for roommate situations. Like, hey, I might be freshly divorced, or I might not be. But are you? And do you need to connect? And, we can live together. We can share that resource. We can help each other out. Maybe even help, with childcare with each other, which I think is awesome. Like, sisters really need to be doing this and helping each other out, because I feel like there's a lot of us out there. That
Absolutely. Like if you're that hunter gatherer, find a roommate who needs a hunter gatherer.
yeah.
Figure out what your skills are and make them work for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I really liked your idea about, and I'm sure you have some other suggestions too, but I liked your idea about, the gift card thing and just kind of setting up a little nest egg for when that does happen, because it's such a scary thing. And when I did it, I didn't have kids, and I was actually the more of the breadwinner in the family, and so I didn't have that kind of fear. But I can only imagine how paralyzing that is, because if you don't know where your rent's going to come from or what you're going to eat for a week, like that's scary, especially when you have kids and you're taking on this whole new life. So overwhelming. What about those that have been at it for, been at the stay-at-home thing for a while, don't have the skill set, maybe didn't go to college like that one gal that you had mentioned, and just is finding it difficult to re-enter the job force? And what sort of advice do you have for them? Is there something that they can do while they're still in the marriage dealing with it? Is there any sort of, do judges ever say, hey bro, like when this is all said and done, you have to put her through college, you have to pay for her college? Like, is that a thing?
It would be a form of spousal maintenance. So and that's like rehabilitative spousal maintenance. So in that type of case, I would go in and I would say, Judge, look how much money she lost and how much money he gained, and in the next 10 years, how much money he's going to get based on her investment and how much she's not getting. And she wants to go to this, and this is how much it costs. And therefore, she's not going to be able to work full time because she has to go to college, and she's going to be whatever she's going to be. And then she will be able, 3 years after that, to be established. But she needs 7 years of support in this amount in order to get self-sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, right, especially if they have kids, that other person should want that for their significant other, because that's their kid's parent.
Yeah.
But we all know, of course, not not is emotionally you're not
Healthy.
yeah, right, exactly.
So let me ask you this, Sherry, being in the position that you're in, do you see, or is there any help or opportunity for somebody in this situation to perhaps get grants for college? Or is there anything within the whole college realm that somebody could connect with that is looking to further their career after something like this?
So actually, when you asked Billie about like college and spousal maintenance and stuff, it made me think. So I work with military students, and military has a way higher divorce rate than civilians. I work with military spouses all day long that are in that planning stage. And being a military spouse myself and being prior service, I feel like there's a lot of things that I know to help them. So it's a little bit different for military because they get huge scholarships and discounts as it is as a spouse.
Mm-hmm.
So I really help coach them through, hey, let's do this. Start school now. Because a lot of them come and they're like, hey, my spouse doesn't want me to go to college. Hey, I don't get to control any of the money. That grant. I have a personal friend, which Katie, who was a military spouse, and her husband at the time was very much controlling and traditional in that regard, that the woman doesn't handle the money, the woman doesn't need to go to school, the woman needs to stay home. And so when he deployed, she got this grant, went to school for free, essentially. It paid for everything. And by the time he was back, she was now prepared and set up to leave in a more stable environment. So yeah, I talk to people all the time, but even if you're not military, there's 1000% grants out there that'll help. And then it's just a matter of how many credits you have at the time or where you are in your educational journey. There's schools that are very inexpensive where that grant would cover everything, at least initially, for like the associates section. And then you can go to a university where it's maybe a little bit more expensive, but at least you have that associate's degree or that many credits where you could start working and be financially stable. There's tons of third-party scholarships out there as well for women, for single mothers, and scholarships. They're a little bit of work, but so much money goes unused every single year. And so I think that that's the biggest thing that people don't realize, that there is free money out there. You got to work for it, but it's totally worth it.
Mm-hmm. Outside of that, somebody who needs a quick fix. I mean, I feel like your friend circle, other women, geez, even our group, like if I were say I was in that situation, I would go to our group and I'd be like, okay, who do I admire? Who can help me put together a resume? Who can help me, help me hook up with either some clothes to go to the interview, or, like who can I pull from to pull all these pieces together so that I can jump in the car, go get something temporary, and then maybe plan for something, a bit more career oriented down the road. I mean, wouldn't you guys do that too? What other advice do you have?
Well, our group specifically, I mean, I won't name names, but a mom had reached out, similar thing. Hey, my husband wants to leave for Bambi, whatever. Mm-hmm. Because of MOMnation, specifically because of our network, like our mom business owners that we network with, that we know and love and trust, I was able to just throw out a name. Hey, contact this person. I know she's looking for an office administrator. And
that's true.
And she was able to work there, move out, move on. And it's all about who you know, 100%. Because when I went through my first divorce, and my parents were there, and I had you, Katie, I didn't really have anybody else. And I lived pretty far from my job, an hour away. The only way I made it through was because of Laura and Olivia and Renee. Mm-hmm. We all became this like interwoven circle of single moms helping one another. And hey, you're picking up our kids today. I'll pick them up this day. I'll stay late. I'll do this. I'm taking them to the YMCA because you work nights and you need to sleep. And literally to this day, we still text each other, even though I'm gone, and we've all moved to different areas and we all have different lifestyles now. Those were literally the best days of our lives, even though we were all struggling, even though we were all going through separation, divorce, or whatever. Having that specific support group was integral in that whole process and being able to survive and get through it.
Other women are important. What do you have for advice there, Billie?
Well, I just love that you said that. It doesn't have to look like maybe you think it's going to look. Like it might be a little gritty. It might be a little messy. It might be like almost like you feel like you're starting over back in college or back as a young adult. And you're relaunching a new life. Mm-hmm. And there's so many resources for you. Nextdoor, Facebook groups, like ask for help. You had this partner that wasn't working for you. And the way that you develop your new life doesn't have to be all by yourself. Like what I love about what you just said, Sherry, is you created a partnership with 3 other women. Yeah. And it wasn't sexual and it wasn't traditional, but it was awesome and it worked. Yeah. And it was good. So be brave, take action, and in so doing, you will develop confidence. You will get new skills. Like it's a good thing. The only other thing I want to mention before I forget is that I've heard of some people who will go get themselves a storage unit and then fill that storage unit with Goodwill donations. Ooh. So that they can make sure that they've got for themselves a set of towels, a set of silverware, some dishes, because starting over financially and buying an entirely new thing is really hard. I'll also tell you that it's a good time to be vulnerable. Like ask who has extra beds. Yeah. Ask. You will be astounded as to how many people want to help you, how many people are overjoyed to help you, and the new network of friends that you can make.
I'm glad that you said that, because that was something that when Sherry was talking and then when you started talking, it really started to bubble up for me. Is I feel like, there's a lot of people out there, and me included. I mean, I just started being super transparent about my entire story, and I'm almost 43 years old, but it's okay. We're human. We go through things, we make mistakes. And honestly, I don't think that there's anybody that walks this planet that doesn't have 1 or 2 in their closet. You know what I mean? Like there isn't anybody. And I feel like the more the less judgmental we are on our sisters and our partners that we're pulling together, and the more just loving and supporting and just appreciating and understanding that we are, the better this is going to be for everybody. Because I feel like, once that goes down, once that guard goes down, and you're like, look, this is me, I made some mistakes, but I want to make good, and here's the direction that I want to go. Like, that's beautiful. That's growth, and that's beautiful right there.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, Billie, so I was stuck this last time, thinking there's no way financially I can make this work. My toddler was never in daycare. Daycares were closed down in California anyway because of COVID. Like, there was just so much. And I was like, there's no way. We have so many bills. We've been not outside our means, but we were living at our means. Right. And so how can I do this? But called Katie and one other friend, and they basically told me, they were supportive, but they were like, okay, you're not going to stay in this toxic environment because you don't think you can do it. You've done it before. You've been a single mom. Like, stop, get out of your head. And even if you haven't, I just want our moms to know that even when it looks like there's not light at the end of the tunnel, I promise you that there is. And Katie swooped in, took my older kids because I didn't want them around the leave, the move. She took them, and just find friends. Support is honestly all you need. She took my older kids for a whole week and then traveled with them across the country to where I was going, got everything set up, happened to have a sister there, got me a couch, like all of the things. And I think that that's another thing. Yes, prepare, but also, I have definitely grown as a person over the years. I used to be very not materialistic, but I was so dead set on, hey, I've worked so hard to get these material items that I didn't want to let them go. And I was like, hey, if I have to start over, how am I going to do this without all of these things? It took me so long to build it up. But this time I was like, I'll take the mattresses for the kids and I don't care. Have everything else. Goodbye. And so like that was a different experience for me this time too. And we don't need everything new. I have kids. It's going to get messy anyway. So like, what's the point? And I still have that couch, Katie, and the kids love it. But it's our home. That's what's more important, is that we're here, we're together. It's a good, healthy, loving environment. So just, I think for moms, keep those things in mind. Yes, prepare, plan as much as you can, but also it might not go the picture perfect way that you want it to, and that's okay. But there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Totally agree. And honestly, like, thank you for letting me help you, because there was no way I was leaving you there, first of all. And like I was helping you either way. So thank you for making it easy on me, because
but we're so close, and that like I still am not that person.
Right. No, I totally know. But years ago, so Billie, we've known each other for a long time. So years and years ago, it wouldn't have gone down like that though, because she wouldn't have let down her guard enough for me to even know things. Right. And to be like, oh, whoa, this is not the right way to go anymore. So I think it's really, really important. Get that support system, trust them, pick the right people. Obviously, right. Sometimes that's difficult, but trust them and let them help you, because there's going to come a day when the shoe's going to be on the other foot and you're going to be able to turn around and give back to that. And just, I guess my advice from having helped people in that situation and having gone through a divorce and stuff is just why are we so prideful? You know what I mean? I mean, I guess it's good to have pride, but why are we so prideful to a detriment?
Right. And what an honor it is to be able to help someone in that situation, right?
Yeah.
Like, you want to.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, honestly, I look back at that whole scenario and I feel like from my perspective, I didn't do much. I enjoyed the kids a ton. We had so much fun. I loved having them, and she can answer this, but I feel like for her, that was a mountain that was moved for her.
Huge, because not only did it shield them from some of the things that they didn't need to see, it allowed me to just focus on what I had to focus on, and which sounds terrible, right? But I don't want my kids to be around toxic environment, but I also don't want them to be around when I can't focus or help them. They were still in school virtually. So how does that look like? I have a toddler running around, plus I'm trying to help them with school, plus working. Like, It was huge. And the fact, again, like not just having them, you're like my sister. So of course I trust you with my whole life and my whole world, but then flying across the country, like getting stuff set up before we arrived. I mean, who does that? You have to have a support system because like Katie said, when in my first divorce, it was an abusive situation. So I was able to connect with a women's shelter for some things. Like I said, I was working, so I didn't need a lot of stuff. But when I was moving, I donated back to that shelter because of what they do. And that was one thing that I knew once I got through that divorce. I promised myself that I would help whoever I could after that, because even my lawyer at the time, she knew I was struggling and that there was no way I could afford a lawyer for everything. So she would let me come in and help her do research, help her so that it was cutting down on the time and the hours. And just the fact that she even, would do that was a huge help to me.
Yeah, that's giant. Now, what about last question, because I know we're getting close to time here, Billie, but what about somebody they don't have good credit? Do you have suggestions on paths they can go down or resources that they can tap into to get that built up to a certain point? And what point does that have to be built up for them to get the utilities on, get the rental, or get a house? I mean, I guess I could answer that question. What in your experience has that looked like?
Yeah. So you have to kind of take stock of your own specific situation, pull your credit report, look at it. What's it say? Talk to SRP or whoever your electric company is, figure it out. They'll turn it on. They just may need a huge deposit.
Yeah.
Right.
So that may not work. So maybe you need to rent a room because you can't go get your own place because your credit does not allow you and your cash flow does not allow you to put down a huge deposit. So you got to get realistic and creative. And I love this podcast so much because what we're talking about is, I love this because the legal stuff. Hi, honey.
Aw. Hi, Rory. Hi, baby.
The legal stuff is secondary to the life stuff.
Yeah.
And what we're talking about is the life stuff. The legal part's very complicated and very simple all at the same time, but it is secondary to you figuring out your plan, taking action. And I shouldn't figure out your plan. You should figure out your plan. I might be able to help here and there, but and there's divorce coaches and there's moms who've been through it. So I think the bottom line from this podcast is be vulnerable and be brave.
Yeah.
Ask for help, make a plan, and you can do this.
Absolutely. And I like what you said about, it sounds so simple, but not a lot of people do it or think about it. Pull your credit. Look at it. You might be surprised and you might be totally fine. Or if it's on that sort of lesser end of things and that, then call these places before you make moves, right? Like call the utility company, see what what your options are. Say, hey, I have a 450 credit score. I'm in the middle of a divorce and it's a DV situation or, whatever. And even be vulnerable with them. And I feel like you'll get further instead of just going, right? Instead of going in cold, asking the question and being like, okay, see you later, bye. Be vulnerable with that person.
Absolutely. People will go out of their way to help you if you give them a reason to, which means you have to ask and you have to share information. St. Vincent de Paul will pay people's utility bills. Churches will help. There's just so many resources in our country. There really are. There really is tremendous opportunity for you to make money driving Uber immediately.
Yep.
Even if you need to take your kids with you, or if you don't want to do Uber, you can do DoorDash or Uber Eats. And there's just so much opportunity if you're willing to kind of like just do it.
I agree. And I feel like there's a level of paralysis that we feel when we're up against a really big decision. Case in point, Cher, we're using you as an example again. When Cher was going through her things, she's incredibly brilliant and she's very, very creative. but I felt like she kind of had a little paralysis, like a little block on certain things. And we'd talk through them and she'd be like, oh my freaking God, thank you for talking with me about that, because I never would have thought of that. And she's, you know, she's brilliant. And so I feel like though those emotions that get stirred up sort of stop you in your tracks. So again, it seems to be definitely the bottom line of this episode is talk to your people, because then you can start discovering, like, I may not have thought of DoorDash, where you're like, duh, dude. I mean, I get my food from there twice a week. You know what I mean? So I think that's important too.
The only other thing is, like, divorce brain is real. And you might feel like, what happened? Like, why can't I think? Why can't I formulate thoughts? What happened? I used to be an intelligent person who could, you know, function. And now I don't know where my keys are. Like, I lose them all day. Like, that's real and it's okay. And you just, like, be gentle on yourself.
It's all of the information you have to gather was so draining too. Like, I felt like I have to get these financial documents from 3 years ago. Like, it was just a lot. And I can't imagine, I didn't have all access to the finances, but I was making the money, right? And then someone else was paying the bills. So I didn't have access to all of the accounts and stuff like that, which was hard. So make sure whether you're the bill payer or not, you need to have access to that is another thing. Yeah. But it's just daunting. So just understand that that's everybody's life during divorce, filling out all of these 500-page papers that your lawyer needs, but that's how they help you. So understand the more they know, the more they can help you. I have one more quick question for you, Billie. So are you seeing people now or ever that stay married on paper for benefits like health insurance, things like that? Good, bad, positives, negatives? What do you feel and see there?
So people who do it unofficially, I don't see. So people who decide they're going to split up on their own, stay married technically, run two houses, I don't see, because they've worked it out. But many times we'll have people who agree on a divorce and then decide not to file that divorce, let's say until the end of the year or until a certain date, because of benefits. So that's one possibility. And then sometimes people will get legally separated if their employer allows a legally separated spouse to maintain those benefits.
Interesting. Like some sort of, I don't know if this is the right word, but like a COBRA on the insurance or something like that.
Well, everybody can get COBRA.
Oh, okay.
So some employers and or insurance companies will cover your legally separated spouse. So you can be legally separated with a parenting plan, with your finances all split up. You're not divorced, so you can't get remarried, but everything else is completely separate. And you could still get benefits that you don't have to pay for, because they would go through the spouse's health insurance the same way when you were married. So that's, it's not always the case. You have to talk to the particular health insurance provider and employer.
But it's another resource, and it kind of goes along with what we said. You've got to ask around and you've got to ask the question. So, you know, what I'm hearing is write your plan out, what it looks like ideally, and then you can like just attack it chunk by chunk and talk to as many people as you can.
Definitely. A couple things also to keep in mind. I know we could keep going and we probably need to wrap up, but
we'll have to have you back because I have more.
The date of service is a very important date. So when you file for divorce and the person is served, that's when the community ends. That's when the money that you make or the money that your spouse make is no longer community property. So until that happens, all the money that's going into retirement accounts, all the money that's going to bank accounts, and any money that anybody's spending is community. So if you need to protect yourself from your spouse's spending, you may need to file sooner rather than later, even while you work through all this stuff. If you are benefiting from your spouse's income and retirement contributions, then you may not want to file right away. You may want to move out even before you file.
Great advice. I think that's something that people don't necessarily think about until it's too late and they've done it incorrectly.
And so that's something that I said earlier, I kind of screwed myself because we had one joint account and I was just thinking, hey, I can't leave them high and dry. So it was just after tax return. So we had a huge chunk of money in there, and then he cleaned me out. and I had nothing for me and the kids. So,
Yeah.
And you could have. You did not owe him your paycheck after you filed for divorce and served him.
but I didn't file. So that's where I screwed myself. So not talking to a lawyer leaves you open for things like this. So even though he cleared out our entire, it was like $13,000, judge didn't care because it was before we filed and it was marital money. And so he was, so keep that in mind, you guys. Talk to Bill and get all the information so you can make your sound plan. And it's kind of like a birthing plan. Like you might write all of these things, just know they might change. You might have to adapt, but there's light at the end of the tunnel, I promise.
Yeah, and at least you have a roadmap and something to follow. Billie, if somebody needs to get in touch with you, and I'm sure that there are many, many out there that do, how would they do that?
My website is mymodernlaw.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on TikTok at ModernLawAZ. You can pretty much find me anywhere.
Your TikTok channel is awesome. You follow her too?
Yeah.
Awesome, guys. Well, Sherry, thank you. And if you out there are interested in being a guest on our show, please follow us at MOMnation on Facebook, YouTube. We're also on TikTok and Instagram, and that is at MOMnation USA is our handle. Give us a like, shoot us a message. Let us know why you'd like to be on the show. Also, right now, while you're listening to this episode on your favorite podcast platform, please download this episode and our previous episodes if you want to. Also, subscribe to us and rate us so that we can get this info out to the masses. There's so many mamas that need to hear the info that we share here every other week. We have amazing topics, really, really helpful guests that we have that come on. So we're really looking to share this real news out there with the mamas that need it. All right, ladies. Thank you again so much.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Billie. Katie.